Hello, psychology students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have notes for the beginning of Module 14, Prenatal and Childhood Development. So let's begin. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of the prenatal stage of development in this little segment of notes here. So as we go along, you may find some things that sound very similar to maybe what you might hear in a biology class. So we're going to start with talking about how it all begins. So as a young woman, one is born with all the eggs that they will ever have, although they may be immature when you're a baby. Only one out of every 5,000 eggs will mature to be released from the ovary. As a young man, you did not begin producing sperm until you reach puberty, but you'll continue producing sperm until you die. Although the rate slows with age, a male will produce somewhere around 1.5 million sperm cells in a 30-minute period of time. That's the rate of roughly 1,000 per second. Okay, so as we talk about, conception and all of that, one of the things that we have to remember is early on, when we talk about the germinal stage, for the most part, that's basically right about the time of fertilization and the development of this brand new life. We have to talk about, how, for the most part, this new life is going to develop. And so we're going to kind of get into that. So prenatal, anytime that we talk about the term itself, pre meaning before birth, being natal, this is before we're actually born. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're not developing. And I think we've got a lot of proof about that. When we talk about the fertilized egg itself, it is sometimes known as a zygote. And around the 10th day, that the zygote will attach to the mother's uterine wall and will stay there for roughly 37, if not maybe 38 weeks. Typically, normal gestation in a human female, is roughly 40 weeks. When we, take those 10 days off, we get around 38, maybe 39 weeks, somewhere in that ballpark. An embryo. This is a developing human organism from about 2 weeks after fertilization through the end of the 8th week. So when we kind of combine the zygote and embryonic kind of stages, for the most part, we're talking about a period of time where some women may not even realize that they have conceived. The embryo has a noticeable heartbeat. Sometimes, though, it may be difficult to detect. And we also have the development of red blood cells produced by its own liver. So as far as talking about organ development, by the time we get to the embryonic stage, there's quite a bit of that that's actually occurring. When we talk about noticeable heartbeat, typically a doctor will use something called the Doppler device, which is kind of like a microphone that they will take over the abdomen wall of a woman who is pregnant. And what that will do is it will amplify the heartbeat. And sometimes around 8 weeks, that may be hard to distinguish. But by the time we get to about the 10th, maybe 11th week after conception, typically that heartbeat is noticeable. Most of the body organs will have formed by the end of this embryonic stage. So once we move beyond that, we move to what is known as the fetus. That is the developing human organism roughly 9 weeks after conception. Fetuses born prematurely at the end of the 9 months have organs that are well enough developed to provide a chance for survival. Matter of fact, in the era that we live in now, there are children that are, prematurely born almost halfway through the normal gestation. So we're talking somewhere in the 20th as far as the weeks are concerned. And because we have better medical technology and care, the chances of survival are much greater today than they were maybe 40 years ago. The fetus receives oxygen and nutrients from the placenta. And unfortunately, the placenta is not a perfect screen. Some viruses, toxins, and drugs do slip through. Teratogens, these are substances that cross the placenta barrier and prevent the fetus from developing normally. That can include things like the flu. Matter of fact, that's the reason why a lot of women, when they are thinking about conceiving, are encouraged to get a flu shot, so that way the developing child will not necessarily be exposed to that. Along with that, fetal alcohol syndrome. This is a physical and cognitive abnormality that appears in children whose mothers have consumed large amounts of alcohol while pregnant. Something very similar to that can be happen when mothers have taken other substances. So, for example, children can be born addicted to things like methamphetamines or cocaine, or if we're talking about things that are happening right now with morphine and perhaps maybe even heroin, those kind of things can still happen. And then finally, sexual transmitted diseases or STDs can also be transmitted to children. These children are more likely to have mental retardation or blindness. If we're talking about like STD, like syphilis, syphilis has had a really profound effect on people who are born blind. So, being treated for that, a lot of times that may be using antibiotics when the mother is still pregnant, can help prevent those STDs being passed on to the babies. The 3 stages of prenatal development, just to recap. Sometimes we call that early stage. The germinal stage is fertilization to 2 weeks. During this stage, the baby's placenta, umbilical cord, amniotic sac are all developing, providing it protection, food, and oxygen. The baby is going to grow very quickly. We have rapid development, probably the fastest development during this whole prenatal period of time. We move then again to the embryonic stage, roughly 2 weeks, up to 8 to 12, depending upon the child. The major body systems, respiratory, nervous systems are all developing along with the organs. The embryo is very vulnerable to environmental influences at this moment in time. And unfortunately, because of how far along it is within the developmental stage, it is possible that a embryo could be developing and the mother may not even realize that she has conceived. And then finally, again, the fetus, roughly 8 to 12 weeks up until the time the baby is born. Usually this is going to happen, or when a child hits this stage, we have the development of the first bone cells. As the baby develops and grows, the baby can become very active. Usually about 20 weeks of gestation, about halfway through, a mother will recognize the baby's movement, and it feels a lot like a fluttering inside your tummy. You can feel the kicks and the turns. As the baby grows larger, mothers will have a tendency to feel the flexing of the baby's legs and arms. Our fetus at this point in time, as far as other things that they're doing, they are squinting, they are swallowing. Yes, they are taking in some of that embryonic fluid for the most part, or amniotic fluid. They may make fists, they might have the hiccups, they may even suck their thumb. So thank you very much.